So hi to everyone who's joined on. My name is Theo. I am the head of programming here at Try Together. And we're really excited to keep hosting this Learn Together series in the new year. This month, and as our first Learn Together as 2026, we're welcoming the lovely Ali. Um, Ali works really closely with the founder of Cape Cod Foster Closet, Sharon, who unfortunately couldn't be here tonight as well. Um, but she works there as an amazing program director. Their organization provides a variety of resources to the Cape Cod community, including connecting us with a lot of students. Okay, sorry, I had to give something permission. And since opening in 2019, their initial location, they have also opened satellite location. Um, as well as opening a closet available in the local office of the Department of Children and Families. Um, and, prior to joining the foster closet in 2025, um, Ali has also served as the program manager at the Martha's Vineyard Family Resource Center. And she's also currently working towards her master's in social work online. We were literally just talking about that, and the incredible work she's doing alongside her graduate work. I cannot say enough good things about Ali and the work of Cape Cod Foster Closet. And, I could go on the whole time. So I'll turn it over to Ali now, who can share her screen and present.
Thank you, Theo, and welcome everyone. If you want to join us with your camera on, you're welcome. Also, totally understand we are in our home environments and that might not be possible, but I'm always happy to see faces. I will be candid that I was planning to attend tonight as a support to Sharon Palmer, who's the founder of the Cape Cod Foster Closet, and Sharon is not feeling well. And so I'm sort of stepping in. I do have a presentation to share to give you a little bit of information about um, our work as well as um, Sharon's journey fostering and my own experience as a kinship foster parent. And there'll be some time at the end for questions, but I am gonna share my screen and open this guy up. Okay, so as Theo said, I am the program director of the Cape Cod Foster Closet. We are based on Cape Cod and support families in the Cape and Islands area of Massachusetts, as well as um, parts of southeastern Mass on the other side of the bridges. I mentioned all of this. These are some of the things that we're going to cover in today's session together. Um, Here gives you a picture of Sharon and Andy Palmer. As I mentioned, they are the founders of the Cape Cod Foster Closet. Um, Sharon and Andy began fostering in 2017, and over the course of 7 years of fostering, they had over 30 children in their home. They started this journey after retiring and moving from upstate New York to the Cape full time and searching for um, a way for them to make a difference in this community as well as get to know more folks on Cape. As COVID was happening and they were thinking about their journey fostering not being something they could sustain forever, they began to think about what they could do to support more foster families and children in foster care beyond the one or two or three kids that were in their home at various points in time. So that seeded the idea to found a nonprofit, which they originally called Nurturing Foster Families. And from Nurturing Foster Families came the Cape Cod Foster Closet. So they, from their network of other foster families, from their experience, several years of fostering, put a call out on Facebook and said, "Hey, I think we're going to start a foster closet. We're taking donations and we are also going to be ready to support families." The original foster closet was in their garage, which lasted about 3 weeks because they quickly realized that they did not have enough space to manage all of the generous donations that were coming in, and that running a foster closet was, going to require a dedicated commercial space. So soon after, they moved into a space in Orleans that we are still in today. We have a storefront space where folks can come to shop. We have a space that we call the Annex, where we take donations and have this big, gorgeous sorting table and store off-season clothing and items. In 2023, our work with the Department of Children and Families, Cape and Islands office grew, and we decided to partner together to support their efforts. They had bags of clothing intended for children who were entering care that were just in their basement because the social workers did not have enough time to manage their own closet space. So they graciously have allowed us to manage their closet now for a couple of years. So we have two volunteers that on a weekly basis are in their space, making sure it's clean, it's organized, and ready for the social workers to utilize. And we also supplement the clothing and supplies that they offer. So if they are low on certain sizes from our own storage in Orleans, we supplement their stock. In last June, we opened a satellite store in East Falmouth. And I don't know how many of those of you are familiar with the Cape, but it is a broad geographic region. So we being on the lower Cape or outer Cape, kind of the crook of the elbow in Orleans, it was challenging for families who lived on the other side of the Cape, closer to the bridges, to get to us. Some of them, it would take 45 minutes or an hour to get to our space. So we felt as we continued to grow, it was really important for us to have more of a presence on the Upper Cape to better support um, Upper Cape families. A little bit about some of these are reflections from Sharon that I've heard her that I want to share with you all. Some of these are my own, but a little insight into what the experience fostering can be like. Um, One of the surprises for Sharon and Andy was that after a new placement arrives at your home, there's very little follow-up. The social workers are super busy, so you are sort of off to the races caring for this child and making sure all of their needs are met. Certainly there's support from the social workers, but it's really your responsibility to meet all of their needs. When children arrive, oftentimes they have little to no belongings. Sometimes they come with a trash bag full of things. Sometimes they come with clothing that doesn't fit. Sometimes all they have is the clothing on their back. That was a huge part of Sharon and Andy's decision to focus their nonprofit on providing basic clothing and essential supplies, having lived through children coming to their home with nothing and wanting to honor the dignity of these children and also make it simple, easy, and quickly available for foster parents to get diapers, to get clothing for school the next day, to get a crib if they needed it, for example. One other thing about fostering is that you have a lot of visits involved. It is definitely beyond regular parenting, especially when a new placement arrives in your home. There's visits with biological parents, trips to the pediatrician, home visits from attorneys, probation officers, sometimes early intervention or other service providers in the community, certainly monthly visits from your social worker and the children's social worker. There are a lot of appointments involved with fostering. One other observation, and I felt this to be true for me too, though in different ways in my experience, is that oftentimes your relationships with the people in your life change when you begin to foster. In some ways, you find that people really step up to support you. Your friends and family, if you're lucky enough to have them, jump in and provide meals and provide substitute care and babysitting if you get them approved through the process, check in with you. And also, you are a parent, so your time changes, the time that you have to spend with your loved ones changes. And certainly for kinship caregivers, the relationships with family, especially biological parents, definitely changes when their children come into your care. Through all of that, fostering is such an impactful experience. To be able to nurture children, to step in a moment that can be the hardest days of their life, to try to provide as much love and care and stability and support that you can to a child or to children is huge. And loving these kids and also seeing them move on to whatever their forever home is there's really kind of no words for it. It is truly, I think, one of the most amazing things we can do as a gift to our community and to the next generation. One other thing that really came up for Sharon and Andy in their experience fostering is they mostly focused on fostering infants, babies, and toddlers was the needs of substance exposed babies. So there are different levels of substance exposure. We say substance exposed, generally speaking. And then there's also the experience of babies who get diagnosed with neonatal abstinence syndrome. So this is a, diagnosed condition where they're experiencing withdrawal symptoms at the time of birth. These babies need different things. They need a really quiet environment. They need constant soothing. They need to be held or worn. They need to be moved. Their feeding needs are different, often needing more frequent feedings or needing to try multiple formulas to find the right fit for the child. There are also often sleep challenges. So I know Sharon and Andy have shared with me that they learned a lot about the specific needs of these babies who have been exposed to substances in utero. A little more about the kinship caregiver side. So we say kinship or relative care, and what we mean is anyone who has a relationship with the child before they were removed. So oftentimes it's a grandparent raising their grandchild. It could be an aunt or an uncle. Sometimes it's a family friend or a teacher. Most often it is biological family who steps up to care for the children. Um, for kinship caregivers, there is often no warning or training involved with stepping up in these moments to care for their loved ones. It is not the same experience as going through the process of getting licensed and doing weeks of training and being able to talk a lot with a social worker about trauma behaviors that you might experience and think through what your parenting style is, especially if you haven't been a parent before. Oftentimes, this happens in a moment or a day, and these family members are given a second to decide can they and will they step up to care for the children in their life. There are a couple of different kinds of kinship parents, kinship caregivers. There are foster parents who work directly with the Department of Children and Families, so they receive the same benefits as foster parents. They also have the same sort of bureaucratic processes. They go through the same court. They have the same visits from social workers and court representatives, etc. And they also receive a foster care stipend for the children in their care. There are also kin who receive guardianship through the probate court. These caregivers have more of a permanent custody status of the children. They don't have the same level of involvement from the state. They're not getting the monthly visits from social workers, and they are not eligible for the stipend. There are different supports that are available for guardianship through the Department of Transitional Assistance, but it is a different process, often a longer process, for getting those supports. There are also kin who are what we call informal caregivers. And these informal caregivers don't have any legal custody of the child. They're often a grandparent or a family member who can be living alongside a biological parent, or the child is living with them, but the parent hasn't given guardianship or there is no involvement with child welfare. And national data shows that there are actually many more informal kinship caregivers, especially grandparents, than there are the more formal foster or guardian kinship caregivers. These caregivers do not have access to any benefits for the caregiving, and they also don't have legal custody. So there are definite challenges around seeking medical care, around school, signing school paperwork, and then, any of the other things, moving a child that come along with having custody of a kiddo. There's research that shows that these informal kinship caregivers are also more likely to live in poverty and experience food insecurity. I talked a little bit about how family relationships, family and friend relationships change, and I think that is definitely a big piece for kinship caregivers. The relationship with the children's biological parents can become very strained through this process. And research shows that kinship caregivers experience higher levels of stress and depression and receive minimal supports in comparison to unrestricted foster parents or foster parents who go through the licensing process and sort of choose um, to foster. Um, I always think like there's someone out here who wants to hear some data. So here's some data. I pulled this from the Massachusetts Department of Children and Families has what do they call it? A database online and they do monthly reporting. So the most recent month that I could pull was September of 2025. But this gives you, a sense of the number of cases statewide. So you can see on here the vast majority of families who are involved with the Department of Children and Families, the children are still in their home with the biological parents. There are, I guess in September, there were 7,800 children and young adults who were in placement, so they were out of home. The average time in placement and the median time in placement, it's sad to say, but this is actually pretty good compared to the national average. Um, Still a long time for kids to not be in a permanent place. And there, you can see sort of the comparison number here, 7,800 children in placement, 21,000 children not in placement. So those are the kids who are still living with bio parent or parents, but a social worker from the state is involved with them. I think it is interesting to get a little snapshot down here in the corner of how what the placement percentages are. So 32% of those 7,800 kids are in kinship care. 20% are in congregate care, and this means things like residential schools, group homes, things of emergency placements, that sort of thing. 17% were with unrelated foster families. So these are foster families who went through the licensing process and don't know the children who are coming into their home. 11% are independent living. So these are kids who have aged out, they're 18 plus, but have decided to stay involved with the department to get some additional support as they transition into adulthood. 11% are comprehensive foster care. That means they have additional needs. So they need a foster parent who's gotten specialized training, mostly around trauma, can be around other developmental delays or things like that. And then 4% are pre-adoptive, so they're on their way through the adoption process. So I think it's important anytime when talking about this system just to lift up the racial inequity that is involved with child welfare. The modern day child welfare system grew out of systems of slavery, of child labor, of apprenticeships of Black children, and residential boarding schools and forced residential placements for Native American children. While that system has since become codified and there's been many changes and adaptations and advocacy efforts and growing awareness about discrimination in the system and inequity in the system, families of color continue to be overrepresented in the system nationally, and as you can see from these statistics, in our state as well. So on the left-hand side, this is from the same period of time, so September of 2025. These are children specifically who were in care, in placement out of or in a placement out of their home, compared with data from the Annie Casey Foundation's 2024 census of the racial makeup of children in Massachusetts. So, what is a foster closet? There are many different types of foster closets. There are foster closets that offer in-person shopping. There are foster closets that just pre-fill orders or take requests, fill them, and send them out. There are online-only foster closets where you can put orders in. There are Facebook-based foster closets. There is no one way to foster closet. Typically, foster closets provide your basic needs, clothing, seasonal winter wear, diapers, and school supplies. Some foster closets offer toys or Christmas gifts or food. Some of the foster closets just provide formula or diapers. There are across the state foster closets that are located inside churches, that are freestanding, which is how the Cape Cod Foster Closet is. Some are inside schools, and usually those closets are not just focused on foster children, but sort of all children in the school environment, as well as closets inside of the DCF offices. So our initial focus for our closet was to get families the basic necessities at the time of a child entering placement. So we said we are at maximum going to get you what you need within 24 hours, and we're going to aim to get it to you faster if we can. We have since grown to support our kinship families. We've grown to allow shopping, sort of unlimited shopping, because we all know how quickly kids grow out of clothing or need new sneakers. We've also grown to support adoptive families who have adopted through foster care. So we don't say just because you've adopted, you're ineligible for our support. We've also really sort of realized, and this slide covers our sort of three buckets of programming, that beyond just providing these items to families, support and opportunities to socialize are critical. So we started by offering three big giveaway events that brought families together. A Celebrate Summer event in June, a back to school event in August, and a Welcome Winter event in November. And at each of these events, we give away all new items, swimsuits and beach towels and flip-flops for summer, and backpacks and school supplies for back to school, and winter coats and boots and hats and gloves for our Welcome Winter event. That has since grown to also creating sort of a separate program around family fun events. So we offer these free events to bring the families together. There are activities of all kinds. We've done hip hop dance, Nerf battles. We do an annual bowling event, magic shows, drumming with glow sticks, really anything that we can offer that's fun, is lighthearted, is going to get the kids interacting with each other, and also provides caregivers an opportunity to connect. And we think what's so, you know, critical about these events is that they don't have any stigma attached to them. There's no stigma about how big your family is or small it is, about the number of children you have or how old they are, about the behaviors of the children or the age of the caregivers. And the kids don't need to explain who their grown-up is. We all are just there to enjoy each other's company and make memories. We've also realized that social workers need support too, that they are busy and often the offices are understaffed and overwhelmed. So, as I said earlier, that led to us not only operating and staffing the closet inside of our local Department of Children and Families office. But we have since offered 24/7 access to our Orleans storefront so that if, for example, a social worker has to remove a child at 2 a.m., they can just go to the store, get into our space, shop for what they need, and bring those items with the child to where they're going. Um, these are a couple of photos of our spaces. I know they're small, but this is our Orleans storefront space here. We have our small little closet in DCF, and we have a sort of mid-sized closet in Falmouth as well. These are some of our numbers from the last year. We served 380 children in 2025 with over 570 bags of clothing. We have a huge, it's actually not that big. Our volunteer base is like 50 volunteers, but the impact they make is huge. So 2,600 volunteer hours, not including our founder, whose time is completely volunteer, and it's sort of uncountable the hours that she put in last year. We have this amazing group of volunteers who are super dedicated to our work, have gotten to know some of these families, and really make our organization run. Other than me, we are entirely volunteer run, and I think it's been obviously really impactful for the families for us to provide this service, but it is also a support to these volunteers to give them an opportunity to give back. So these are just some pictures of some of our events and things. I am going to skip past that because I'm realizing that I don't remember if I have approval to share all of those photos, so I probably should not have put them there. We will figure that out later, Theo. I have now talked for like 26 minutes straight, so I'm gonna turn it over to you all and see if you have any questions or thoughts about our work or experience fostering or really anything.
Good evening. I'm Paul, and I had a question about two slides back. I think it was the one you had the with the five circles, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
sorry, the words. If you could go back, I could tell you what it was because it was a term I did not know. That one right there, touch points. What if you mentioned that earlier? I missed it. What are those, please?
Yeah, that's the word that we use. We don't have a good way to describe it, or sometimes it could be called like an engagement. So that's the number of times that a child has
Gotcha.
come
Okay,
to our
thanks.
any of our things. Yeah,
Okay,
good question.
thanks.
Anybody else?
I think I have a question. You've expanded a lot, in the last, especially like the last year. What sort of challenges have you faced with doing that in your work? Obviously you're, running a lot of programming. Um, and how do you sort of deal with those challenges as they've come up during that expansion?
Hmm. Yeah, uh, there have been challenges, certainly. I think adding the new space to Falmouth has been huge in terms of accessibility, but also has come with a number of logistical challenges. That is a really small space, so we have some storage there, but it's not, um, it's not big enough to hold what we need to keep that store running. So we now have drivers who go between our spaces, and I drive between our spaces in Orleans and Falmouth, which is probably, I mean, 50 minutes between the two. So it's not particularly close. Um, as well as, figuring out how to we also do delivery, I should say. So we have families who come and shop in our stores during open hours, but we will also deliver. So expanding to do the delivery as well as having the Falmouth space and supplementing our Hyannis space, I would say has been a big challenge for us. And the biggest thing for us managing these challenges is this incredible group of volunteers who really care. And I think, we're lucky to live in a community that has a number of retirees and folks who are so generous. The Cape Cod community really supports each other. And we have folks with all of these different needs, or desires and skills. the drivers. We have folks who just want to fold clothes. We have a volunteer who is our sort of tech person extraordinaire. And the nonprofit has really evolved organically. We're going to be 5 in March, and I only started with us in September. So, I've learned a lot about this organization in the last 5 months. I was a beneficiary when I was a kinship caregiver a few years ago. So I've known about the organization, but um, so we're figuring out now as we reach 5 years, how much of that organic evolution and sort of really grassroots support can we keep while also sustaining this organization, making sure that we're reaching families, and providing, the accessible and high quality services to meet the gaps that we see, um, and to have another great 5 years as long as there's a need um, for foster families.
I have a question, Allie. Um, how do you get these items? Do you have corporate sponsors, individual donators? How do you purchase all of these things?
Yeah, that's a great question. We mostly get all of our supplies donated in kind. So we have a mix of corporate sponsors, and community groups who run drives for us throughout the year, as well as individual donors. So our clothing is a mix of new items and what we say, or what we call as like new items. So not gently used, like new. We have a really high standard because we want the items that we give to communicate the dignity that we feel about these children. So we end up passing on a lot of clothing, and we have some great organizations that we work with who will take clothing that doesn't meet our standards or can get refunded through like textile recycling. Um, I would say that the majority of our clothing comes from individual donors. But maybe 20% corporations or other community groups who are like, we're gonna do a sock drive for Socktober, or um, our bank wants to run a drive for pants for you all. So it's a mix of things. And then we also, we're a nonprofit, so we fundraise, and we do have a line item in our budget that's about purchasing Gap clothing, but it really is Gap things. So we feel super grateful to be in a community that is so generous with the in-kind donations.
Right, right. So how do you work mainly with DCF? How do you find your kinship families or foster families on the Cape? Do you advertise? How do you find your families?
Yeah, a mix. The original group was really Sharon and Andy's friends and people they had met through fostering. We have a really strong working relationship with our area office, so we certainly get referrals from them. And we have done a lot of work to try to get the word out more broadly to reach some more of those kinship caregivers. I would say we have some more work to do on that front. Certainly some outreach. We've done some outreach to schools and to the probate court, for example. But I think there's probably some other avenues that we haven't tried yet to reach some of those caregivers who aren't involved with some of those systems.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Please, one more question, and that is, I heard tonight a lot of emphasis on needs for the younger people, but what is your age range? What is how old are the people in your foster care?
Yeah, we support the whole age range, so 0 to 18. We
Yeah.
will provide some support to those 18 to 22, 24-year-olds who are transitioning into
Oh,
adulthood, but primarily
oh,
it's 0 to 18.
okay, yeah,
And
yeah,
yeah, you make a great point. The focus on sort of infants, babies, that piece really sort of comes from Sharon's story and her
nope,
experience with fostering.
yeah, but it's a
Um,
big need. I understand. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I mean, it is a big need, and the need for teens and caregivers for school-aged and youth is huge. So, yeah, appreciate you lifting that up.
I have a question more generally about foster care, if that's okay.
True.
So I'm wondering when during the process of adoption, like how does that work? Do kids get to meet like potential adopters? Do foster parents get to meet potential adopters? Like how would the process work to make it as smooth as possible for the kid?
Yeah, I can answer that based on my experience, but I will say the adoptive process is not as versed in how that works. From my from my experience as a kinship caregiver, and so this would be a child that they most often want the kinship caregiver to move to adoption. What happens is that the well, I'm thinking about how deep to go with this. Generally, if a point in time is reached where it's determined by the court that the caregivers, that biological parents, are not going to be able to reunify with the children, and then the children will move into what's called like a pre-adoptive placement. So sometimes that means it's with the kinship caregiver that they're with. Sometimes it means it's with the foster family. Sometimes it means, for example, with Sharon and Andy, they didn't get into fostering to adopt. So they had children who were in their care, and when it was decided, okay, going home isn't going to work for these children, those children were then placed in a pre-adoptive placement. And the goal is that pre-adoptive placement is the adoptive placement. Um, I believe, there's a whole matching process that happens with children who have are open for adoption, of children who are moving into the pre-adoptive placement. Um, I'm not as familiar with like all of the ins and outs of that, but that's generally the steps. And then getting towards adoption is like a whole thing that takes months and months and months.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I could send you some more information that's out there or connect you with somebody who could better answer that question too. Well, thank you so much for being here and for your time and attention and for being flexible with me jumping in instead of Sharon tonight, and listening to me blab on. I really appreciate it. It's wonderful to be in this space with other folks who care about foster children and want to know more about how to support them.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ali, and thank you guys all for coming today. It was great hearing from you. We really love working with Cape Cod Foster Closet, not just for this presentation, but also just generally. You guys are great. And we were so happy you guys got to share with, our organization. Um, yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah, and thank you all again so much for coming tonight. And we hope to see you next month for the next Learn Together.